Sketchy? Yes. It's the start of replacing the rear main seal. 06 H3. 3.5 liter. Here we go. So here, first thing, taking off the front drive shaft, I rounded out one of the bolts. That was the first challenge. I filed on it a little bit to get some flat spots, but regardless, take it out. I got some plugs and sensors, of course, all over the transfer case. You got to unplug those. Exhausts, you'll need to take that and move it out of the way so your transfer case can roll over and shimmy. Here I used a motorcycle strap under the transfer case so that I can lower it. I'm working alone, so there's another angle there, strap and the buckle. Everything's disconnected. Relieve the tension and start to pull it out. And notice I didn't have room with that solid cross member, so I had to take out the actuator. That gave me just a few more inches to slide it back off of the input shaft, and I could lower it. You got to nose it down where the bolts are, and the input shaft, nose that down and then bring it down. And it's kind of heavy, 80-90 pounds, something like that. But then you're left with the transmission. What I decided to do here was leave that middle cross member attached to the transmission mounts, and what I did was built a block on top of the floor jack. It had to be taller than that since it was on jack stands and so forth, but yeah, I left everything together. Now that's the hole you have to work with to get your torque converter bolts loose. It's going to take a special tool, offset 18mm wrench. I used some different sockets than what you see there, and it was quite the challenge, but it can be done. A little frustrating, but if you have the right tool for it, it'll be okay. If you have special tools, even better, but the offset 18mm box and wrench, I believe, will fit in there. And of course you spin it around to get them bolts loose. You can use a screwdriver to wedge those teeth to keep it from spinning. Then you'll have the transmission cooler lines, those keeper wires. You'll need to undo those. Don't lose them, and hoses will just pull out like you see there. They are a little snug, but they'll come out. So that's a bigger block on top of what I had originally, pushing up on the transmission. The cross member is still attached, and I just loosened those up. Several 18mm, 15mm bolts. Those are the drive linkages, of course. Cables, they can be all bolted. And there's the transmission sitting, and it sits balanced pretty well. As long as you center it, it'll sit there on the jack just fine. So there's 2 dowel pins on the engine block. Shimmy it back, and it'll come down nice and easy. Don't forget your transmission dipstick. That will pull out in case you forget, but you see I left it there and forgot about it, so I had to undo that, of course, before I went back together with it. So transmission dipstick. Now looking at the rear main seal existing, something looks a little amiss. Something's off, and the closer inspection we find that rear main seal was installed backwards, and someone had already been in here, and there's some silicone and such around it. It was kind of a challenge to get that seal out, but wood screw on the side and prying it open. But you see how that seal is backwards. It's the wrong way. I guess they didn't have the cone tool to
Put them backwards.
yeah, it's all backwards. They didn't have the cone to put it in correctly.
Transmission shop rebuilt the transmission.
Now it's installed there correctly, and then now it's going back together with it. That little lady's foot pry bar, put a bolt back in for the transmission, and it helps to bind up the flex plate when you torque. It works the same way to take it off. So Don't mind that oil that's dripping down. That's from up on top. Some moisture in the oil lines I had up there. Nothing to do with the transmission. But there it's going back together. Transmission is back in place. Transfer case is back up. Actuator's back on. Don't forget all your cooling lines. All the connectors, plugs, drive linkages. Their drive shaft. Rounded out bolt. Drive shafts are going back on here. And that's the transmission in place. Exhaust was put back on. And we get it started just to verify. There's running. But no oil leaks. It was leaking pretty good prior to this. So I believe I've made some headway, made some progress. It's a doable job, single person. You just got to be persistent, and if you can find some help, do get some help. It can be done. So hope that works for you. Hope it helps.